Welcome to the channel where powerful stories come to life. Get ready for truth, emotion, and transformation, one story at a time. There are certain scenes that feel like they're straight out of a movie, yet they happen every single day, right under our noses. There are still people who insist on judging someone's worth based solely on appearance, and that's exactly what happened here. The owner's daughter, disguised as a simple employee, walked into the cafe unnoticed. As she waited for her order, she overheard two employees whispering, "People like her don't even leave a tip." They had no idea who they were talking about. This is where this story takes an unexpected turn, because instead of reacting with anger, shouting, or humiliation, she chose a path that few would dare to take. It wasn't just about correcting behavior, but delivering a real lesson in awareness, a lesson many could apply in their own workplaces. This story goes far beyond a cafe and two careless employees. It shows how we silently, often automatically, carry judgments in our daily lives, and how small decisions can actually spark profound transformations. The owner's daughter understood that, and through an act of empathy, she planted the seed of a change that would reach far beyond that counter. So stay with me until the end, because what happened next will surprise you. This story didn't just transform two employees, it redefined the entire company culture. And in the end, you'll see how applying the same principle can change your perspective, your relationships, and the small injustices you witness every day. Shall we? The company cafe was busy that morning. Isabela, in her simple manner, basic t-shirt and a messy bun, walked in as if she were just any customer. In fact, few even noticed her presence, and those who did, judged. It's funny how stories often begin just when we think we're seeing everything, but in reality, we see nothing. Two employees whispered behind the counter, "She probably won't even leave a 10% tip." Just a trivial comment? Maybe. But right there, one of those stories that transform entire environments was being born. It's remarkable how judgment walks hand in hand with ignorance, and it's not just in cafes. Think about how many times someone has looked at a person wearing flip-flops in a car dealership and assumed they couldn't afford a car, or how many job interviews are lost before the first word is spoken, based solely on the candidate's appearance. These are stories hidden beneath the surface that most people never even attempt to uncover. Now imagine the strength it takes to remain silent while someone digs their own grave. That's exactly what Isabela did. She didn't argue, didn't correct, she simply listened. The stage was being set for something far greater, because behind that simplicity, there was much more than the employees could ever imagine. And like every good story, the best was yet to come. What those employees didn't know, and this is where many stories gain their true weight, was that Isabela carried a resume few could even dream of. Director of a social inclusion project, she didn't just study the subject, she lived every bit of it. For years she worked with marginalized communities, heard stories of both subtle and violent prejudice, and changed lives through one simple method: practical empathy. These are the real stories that never make it to social media, but silently build true revolutions. While many sat through diversity PowerPoint slides, Isabela was on the front lines. She was the one sitting with vulnerable youth, teaching everything from professional etiquette to navigating a first job. Every hug, every word, every gentle correction carried the weight of someone who understands that prejudice isn't destroyed with speeches but through lived experience. These are living stories that no diploma alone can produce. The most ironic part? That very cafe sponsored the project she led. In other words, the employees received salaries from a company that invested in something they, in practice, had yet to fully understand. But Isabela knew that certain lessons don't come from authority alone. They must be personally experienced, and the story unfolding there was just beginning to teach. Isabela could have revealed herself right then, but she chose something far more strategic: silent observation. In many stories of transformation, true power lies in watching as the masks fall naturally. She remained in line, ordered her coffee like any customer, and all the while, her attentive eyes absorbed every detail of the service routine. Subtle facial expressions, slightly sarcastic tones, dismissive looks toward customers in simple clothing. Everything was being mentally recorded, as if inside a human behavior lab. It's curious how people reveal their true character when they think no one important is watching. Isabela witnessed scenes that would easily be brushed off as innocent jokes by those who fail to grasp the weight of subtle prejudice. An elderly woman with grocery bags was rushed through her order. A young man in a worn-out t-shirt barely received a "good morning," These tiny gestures, almost invisible, build stories of pain that many carry without ever fully understanding why. But Isabela, with her experience, knew exactly what was happening. All of it would be crucial for what she and her father were planning. Because when you seek to transform an organization's culture, hearsay isn't enough. You need to feel the unfiltered atmosphere yourself. And so, through this silent experiment, the chess pieces began aligning for the next move in the story. The next day, the company woke up to a different tone. Everyone was summoned to an extraordinary meeting by the president himself. The room was packed. Whispers filled the air. No one knew the reason. Isabela, now officially introduced as the owner's daughter, remained silent until called upon. In many corporate stories, it's in these moments of uncertainty that great lessons begin to unfold. The air grew heavier, as if everyone sensed something serious was about to be said. When Isabela spoke, her tone wasn't accusatory but filled with stories of learning. Calm and composed, she began describing what she had witnessed. She used no harsh words, named no one directly. She simply recounted the facts in vivid detail: the whispers, the dismissive looks, the rushed service for humbler customers. It was as though she held up a mirror to each employee, reflecting behaviors that had previously been ignored or minimized. As she spoke, the silence in the room grew increasingly uncomfortable. Some lowered their gaze, others swallowed hard. Many realized that these stories weren't just about her, they were about each of them. It wasn't a conversation about punishment, but about awareness. And as in every good transformation narrative, the greatest impact was still to come. That's when Isabela did something few would have the courage to do. With a soft smile, she removed her makeshift new employee badge and revealed her true identity in front of everyone. That seemingly ordinary young woman was, in fact, the owner's daughter. It's in stories like these that life delivers its most dramatic plot twists, when those we judge as insignificant reveal themselves to be far greater than we ever imagined. The shock was immediate. Wide eyes, stunned faces, and a silence that spoke louder than any words. You know that feeling when the ground seems to vanish beneath your feet? That's exactly what many experienced in that moment. Reality hit hard. She wasn't just any customer. She was someone with power, vision, and purpose. And most importantly, someone who chose not to expose, but to teach. Many stories of growth are born from this discomfort, from this rupture between surface image and profound reality. Reflection became unavoidable. Each employee mentally revisited their own actions. How many times had they acted indifferently? How many customers had they treated with contempt? It was as though every memory now carried new weight. But as we'll see shortly, Isabela and her father weren't there to point fingers, but to guide everyone into a story of transformation that still had much to teach. Many expected the worst: dismissals, public reprimands, embarrassment. But the story that Isabela and her father wanted to build went far beyond punishment. With the calm of someone who sees beyond the obvious, the president announced a different decision. No one would be fired. Instead, everyone would participate in intensive empathy and humanized service training, led by Isabela and her inclusion team. It was an opportunity for growth, not for punishment. This is where many companies go wrong. They confuse correction with retaliation. And honestly, this applies to life as well. When someone makes a mistake, there's always a chance to educate, to show the right path firmly, but respectfully. Isabela knew it was far more effective to teach through living stories, through real examples, rather than simply quoting rules from a manual. After all, it's in stories that people truly recognize themselves and begin to transform. The room, once filled with fear, was now overtaken by a thoughtful silence. Those employees who believed they knew everything about customer service were about to discover how much they still had to learn. And that's when the real transformation began to take its first steps, paving the way for something even deeper. The training sessions began the following week, and soon the power of well-told stories became clear. Isabela and her team gathered real-life accounts from people who had personally experienced the weight of prejudice in customer service. These weren't just theories. They were voices, faces, and experiences that dismantled any defensive arguments. When a young man shared how he had been humiliated during a job interview because of his simple clothes, many in the room felt the sting of having once done the same, often without even realizing it. These stories had a powerful effect. They created genuine empathy. It was no longer a boring lecture about serving the customer well. It was an invitation to see the human being behind each face, just like life works. Want to practice? Next time you're being served somewhere, genuinely thank the person for their service. A simple thank you for your care can transform someone's day, and you'll start to understand the power of these small gestures. As the days went by, employees started opening up, sharing their own failures and understanding where they had gone wrong. Each training session seemed to turn into a new story of awakened awareness. And the most beautiful part? There was still more to come, because true transformation doesn't end when it begins. It simply moves into new chapters. Over time, what began as discomfort turned into real learning. Some employees, once skeptical, now approached Isabela after training sessions. They offered sincere apologies, not out of obligation but out of genuine recognition of their mistakes. This is how many stories of profound change begin, not on the day of the scolding, but on the day when the realization finally sinks in. Pride gives way to humility, and learning finds fertile ground. The behavior in customer service visibly changed. Those cold glances were replaced by sincere smiles, voices gained warmth, and small kindnesses became part of the daily routine. It's in these details that stories of organizational culture are built. Want an example? A simple welcome spoken from the heart can spark a powerful human connection, something customers feel, even if they can't explain it. And the most fascinating part, the employees themselves began sharing these stories outside of work. They told them to friends, family, and applied them in their personal lives. Because once you understand the impact of a look or a gesture, you begin to see the world through a different lens. And yet, there was still one last important chapter to be written in this journey. As the months passed, the transformation became visible not only within the team, but in the very environment of the cafe. The company, once known solely for its coffee, became recognized as a reference in humanized service. And the most beautiful part of these stories is that the credit didn't belong solely to upper management, but to every employee who chose to change. The culture of empathy, once a distant concept, now lived in every simple gesture. Isabela naturally became the symbol of this shift, not because she was the owner's daughter, but because of her ability to lead a deep change without resorting to authoritarianism. And that, let's face it, is one of the greatest lessons from these stories. Leadership is not about shouting louder, but about inspiring more deeply. And anyone can apply this in life. Next time someone treats you poorly, ask yourself, has this person ever had the chance to learn differently? Thus, the cafe became a case study, discussed in other companies, in lectures, and even in management courses. The story, that was born from a small act of prejudice, turned into a silent revolution. But like every great learning journey, the real secret of this transformation isn't in what happened. It's in what each person did with what they learned. Now I want to challenge you. How many times in your daily life have you judged someone based only on what you saw on the surface? How many stories have you missed out on because the packaging didn't seem interesting? The truth is, often the greatest human treasures are hidden precisely where most people aren't looking. And the real turning point happens when you choose to see beyond, but not just at work, but in your entire life. Think with me. What if, starting today, you began to see every person as a story waiting to be told? How would that change your customer service? How would it transform your relationships with colleagues, friends, even strangers? Perhaps there lies the key to a life with more purpose, respect, and most importantly, continuous learning. If this content made sense to you, take a moment to subscribe to the channel, activate notifications, and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Because here, we don't just tell stories, we transform the way you see the world.